Chapter 2 New Life. Cloudsdale. Two Pegasi were walking along happily together, the male having his wing draped along the female's back. Bo Hothoof and Windy Whistles were happy as can be, just enjoying one another's company as they walked away from the restaurant where they had only recently been eating a meal together. Henny Pony could tell that they were happily married, a marriage that had lasted ever since they were both in their early 20s, with their daughter being conceived on the wedding night. That daughter was Rainbow Dash, who 20 years later was still the pride of her two doting parents. Their daughter was practically a national icon, having become the bearer of the element of loyalty 4 years earlier, and was now both a member of the Wonderbolts and sat within the inner circle of one of the 4 ruling princesses of Equestria. Of course, they didn't actually know about the Wonderbolt part until a few weeks prior, when a little filly named Scootaloo revealed that fact after literally crashing through their lawn. After the family drama that had arisen from that little incident, Rainbow Dash and Scootaloo had returned to Ponyville, while the two proudest parents in Equestria were able to enjoy a little peace and quiet together.
So, what do you want to do when we get home?
Windy Whistles asked her husband, a suggestive look on her face. A look he missed completely. Now that you mention it, I was thinking of renovating the trophy room. What do you think about adding confetti to the door? Windy rolled her eyes.
I'm not cleaning that up every time you go in there, which is every single day.
Well, if you have any suggestions, I'm all ears.
Maybe we should ask Scootaloo. She seems to have a few bright ideas when it comes to our little Dashie,
she suggested.
She did like the room, after all.
We can send her a letter, Bo agreed. Or maybe a visit is in order. We can drop in on Rainbow while we're there. We haven't interacted much with those friends of hers. Heck, we only saw them in passing at the princess's hearth-warming party. Windy Whistle's face lit up.
Oh, what a great idea! It was such an experience being in that castle. And maybe we can see Dashie's throne even.
Bo blinked. Dash has a throne?
Well, that's what I heard. Apparently all the element bearers do.
Okay, we have to get her picture of it to add to the collection, Bo stated enthusiastically. Preferably when Rainbow Dash is sitting in it. You know, it adds to the... Windy Whistle stuffed a hoof into her husband's mouth without warning. A confused expression crossed his features that only increased when he saw his wife's ears standing on end.
Do you hear that?
Bo's response was muffled.
Oh, sorry.
Windy apologized, removing the hoof. Thank you, Bo Hothoof deadpanned. And no, what is it?
Listen, Bo. Doesn't that sound like crying to you?
Bo strained his ears, and he finally heard the very faint sound of what seemed to be a baby's cries. Yeah, I do. Where's that coming from?
Down there, I think,
Windy stated, gesturing towards an alleyway a little ways up the street.
Let's go!
Windy led the way, with her husband hurriedly following behind her. When they reached the alleyway, the solid architecture of the street gave way to simple cloud that was only traversable due to the two Pegasi's innate magic abilities which unicorns and earth ponies lacked without the proper enchantments. The alleyway led on straight ahead for a ways before suddenly having a left turn. When the couple reached said turn, they were faced with another straight stretch that led to an eventual right turn that likely led back out onto an opposing street. They didn't need to go that far, however. The distressed cries were extremely audible now, and the source of those cries was within sight. Is that a cardboard box? Bo Hothoof asked. A normal cardboard box on cloud?
It must be enchanted,
Windy Whistles noted.
A unicorn must have left it or something.
The two gingerly approached the box, one cautious step at a time. When they reached it, they found it was already open to the sky, and the contents were exactly what they had expected them to be due to the constant crying. A little blue Pegasus filly tucked in a blue blanket of a similar shade to her coat. She had a very light brown mane and tail and dark blue eyes that bounced around erratically, as if trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Her entire form shivered in fear that was only added to the constant terrified wailing filling the air. Her tiny little wings twitched every few moments.
What in Celestias?
Windy Whistles mumbled to herself in shock and appalled disbelief.
Who would leave such a defenseless filly here like this?
Is she all right? Bo asked, concern dominating his voice. Gently, and with great care, Windy Whistles picked the filly up and let her rest in her right foreleg. The filly seemed to notice the two ponies for the first time, her cries dying away with a final hiccup. Her red, puffed-up eyes met Windy's, the filly continuing to tremble in fear.
Hey there, little one,
Windy cooed.
There's no need to be scared. You're safe. We're going to get you help, okay?
The filly hiccuped up again, then proceeding to bury her head in Windy's chest while emitting a few shy whimpers.
She's terrified,
Windy noted.
Oh, she must not have the faintest idea where she is, poor little thing.
We've got to take her to the authorities, honey, Bo stated. They should be able to find out who she is.
And what? Let the parents who abandoned her do it again?
I don't think they would get custody, you know that, Bo pointed out. But we can find out who she is and make sure she's placed somewhere safe.
Somewhere safe?
Windy mumbled, looking down on the little timid filly with mothering eyes.
All right, but in the meantime, I'm not calling her the baby or something. Even if it's temporary, we need a name for her.
Well, how about Little Wing? Bo suggested. Just until we find out her real one. Windy chuckled lightly, still holding on to the filly protectively.
All right, let's get her out of this place.
Later that day. After the two strange pony things had found her, the former human turned filly had fallen asleep. Before that, however, she had heard them give her the name Little Wing. It's not like she had any great attachment to her old name, but it was still weird. Weirder still, she could understand them. She hadn't really thought about it during her encounter with Penumbra, only then considering it as sleep enclosed around her. She guessed that Penumbra might have had something to do with it, but didn't have long to contemplate it amidst incoming sleep and an already taxed mental state. When she next awoke, she appeared to be in a rather official-looking building with yet more ponies surrounding her, along with the first two. As her eyes slowly opened, she noted she was on a small bed that seemed to have been wheeled in while what appeared to be a doctor of sorts looked her over. Over by the two who found her, two other Pegasi in armor were questioning them about how they found Little Wing. So she was just in a box down some alleyway? One of the guards asked. Mrs. Windy Whistles and Mr. Bo Hothoof, are you sure you didn't see any pony else?
No pony,
Windy Whistles stated.
She was alone.
Excuse me. The doctor spoke out towards the others. She's woken up. Windy gasped and rushed towards the bed with the other walking more calmly behind her. Little Wing looked up towards the blue mare, seeing nothing but care in her eyes. It was a look she was not used to receiving.
Are you okay, sweetie?
Windy asked, obviously not receiving a reply.
The doc says you're all right, so we're just going to find out who you are now.
About that, one of the guards spoke up, having just been spoken to by a third arriving guard. According to the doc here, the filly is about a week old, and we've just been going over all the births in Cloudsdale over the past week. And? Bo Hothoof inquired. Nothing. No foal born in the past week matched this filly's exact description. She could have been brought in from outside Cloudsdale, the pony doctor suggested. They did say they found her in an enchanted cardboard box. We'd have to do some extra digging, the guard stated. But it's also possible the filly was born outside a hospital and hasn't got any official birth certificate or any other documentation.
So what happens to her?
In all likelihood, she may very well be sent to an orphanage, the guard admitted. On hearing that word, Little Wing's heart sank, and she curled up slightly while emitting another whimper. She didn't want to start a second life without any parents. She wanted a home, and a mother and a father who loved her. She didn't want to be alone again. Windy's eyes widened.
Orphanage? Bo, we can't let this poor little foal be thrown in there. It's not right.
Bo sighed. I know, honey, but what can we do? Wendy drooped, glancing back towards Little Wing. The filly met her gaze, which was almost pleading to the mare for help. She saw terror mixed in with a distant longing and perhaps just a little bit of hope. The mare felt a lump form in her throat. She just couldn't do it. She just could not leave this filly's fate in the hooves of any pony else. She's completely healthy, the doctor stated to the guards. You can take her whenever.
No!
Wendy Whistles commanded.
If her only other option is an orphanage to be alone, then we'll make sure that does not happen. We'll look after her.
Honey! Bo Hothuff called out in surprise. You really want that? Little Wing suddenly found herself being brought up into Wendy Whistle's grasp once more, the mare walking right up to her husband and presenting the filly to him.
Look at her, Bo!
Wendy stated desperately.
She's so tiny and vulnerable and yet so beautiful. We have to do this, and I'm more than capable of raising another child, thank you very much.
I know, but... it's just so sudden, Bo stated. But if it's what you want, I'm in. One of the guards hummed. You're Rainbow Dash's parents, right? Wendy nodded.
Yes, that's right.
The guard nodded. Well, then I'll need to clear it with the higher-ups, but I think it'll be allowed. I think the fact your daughter is so close to Princess Twilight Sparkle will add some weight to your request. Little Wing let out a small and unnoticed sigh of relief. She was still terrified beyond all belief, but it was a start. Though, what was that about their daughter being close to a princess? Bo and Wendy's home. They had been stuck for a few more hours, Wendy Whistles and Bo Hothuff having to sign one form or another after the next before they allowed Little Wing into their custody. However, the guard had been correct and it all turned out fine in the end. When they were finally able to leave, Wendy Whistles gently deposited Little Wing onto her back, where the filly found a surprisingly comfortable spot between her wings to curl up. The whole trip she laid staring into space. She had received more affection in the past day than she had in 13 years. She didn't quite know what to make of it all. The journey did give her ample time to finally process everything that was happening at long last. Her death and her subsequent resurrection, and not only was she now a Pegasus, but she was also an infant Pegasus. She was so small and helpless, she couldn't even walk or talk. She had tried doing both. She half expected to nod off again and wake up back where she started. Only time would tell. The sun was dipping below the horizon when Little Wings set eyes on her new home for the first time. It was larger than her old house and far more beautiful.
Here we are, dear,
Wendy said happily as she walked in through the front door, switching on the lights as she went. Everything was so bright, so clean and tidy. Little Wing was beyond mesmerized by the sight. Wendy brought her from the hallway and into the living room. Several comfy-looking seats spread about, and there was a fireplace with 3 decorative plates with sun motifs sitting on the mantel. It was also then that her stomach rumbled.
Oh, you haven't eaten yet, have you?
Wendy Whistles realized. You sure you're up to that, honey? Bo Hothuff asked, entering the living room as well. Little Wing was confused as to what he meant by that.
Well, it's not like we have any bottles lying around the house. Besides, I know how to do it.
All right, Bo conceded. I'm gonna go set up Dashy's old cot and get out the nappies we never used on Dash. Little Wing blinked. Nappies? She was an infant, true, but she didn't like the idea of wearing one of those. She didn't have time to dwell on that, however, as she found out exactly how she was to be fed. She really should have seen that coming, especially since they had to stop off at the hospital on the way home so Wendy could receive, as the filly had overheard, a spell to reactivate a specific hormone, though at the time, Little Wing didn't really understand what was happening in the least. She was initially repulsed by the very idea of it, but however much she resisted, a mix of hunger, Wendy's encouragement, and emerging infantile instincts soon put an end to any and all rebellion. When all was said and done, it was as if what little energy she had left completely dissipated. With a yawn and a fluff of her tiny little wings, she found herself curling up under Windy Whistle's protective wing, slowly dozing off back to sleep. "It's all set," Bose stated as he returned with a nappy and huff. "You all done here?"
Mm-hmm.
Windy stated with a motherly smile.
Oh, she's completely shattered. Let's put her in the nappy and then right off to bed.
"No arguments from me," Bo replied as he lifted the stirring little wing away from his reluctant wife. "Now, let's see if I remember how to do this." He did, as it turned out. And once the nappy was on, he gently picked up the full and, with his wife at his side, slowly made his way up the stairs toward Rainbow Dash's old bedroom. There, Dash's full hood crib had been set up, the mobile depicting the era's Wonderbolt team flying around in circles. Little Wing was still half asleep when he placed her into the crib, both ponies kissing her on the forehead goodnight. They too seemed to be a little tired. The day's events having been so eventful and so sudden, they needed almost as much time to process it as Little Wing. Almost. "So, we need to get Rainbow Dash up here ASAP, right?" Bo quietly asked his wife.
We should invite Scootaloo as well. Make it a surprise.
Windy eagerly responded, albeit also in a whisper. "And what if they do find her parents?"
They abandoned her. I'm not letting this little one go without a fight.
Windy stated with a determined expression.
And I can't wait for Dashy to meet her new little sister, and I mean, just look at her.
The mare looked down on her newly adopted daughter, her face one of absolute adoration. Gently, she took her husband's hoof and led him out of the room. As sleep finally claimed Little Wing in full, she swore she heard one last declaration from Windy Whistles.
Best sleeper ever.